Elder Maruk was older than the concept of boredom itself. His skin, if one could call it skin, was a layered tapestry of overlapping wrinkles that seemed to drift in and out of physical form. Most of the younger delegates on the Grand Harmonium Council found it difficult to look him in the eye, though no one was quite certain which of the many creases on his face actually counted as eyes. He had sat at the head of that humming stasis table for so many millennia that he no longer remembered the color of his own home star. Yet he remembered countless catastrophes that had begun with the best of intentions, or none at all. And he was certain, with a kind of cosmic weariness, that the next one was about to unfold because of humans. Humans. The word itself had become a whispered dread in the corridors of interstellar politics. One might have thought that such a small, seemingly fragile bipedal species would pose no threat to the far-advanced civilizations swirling around the galactic center. But Elder Maruk believed otherwise. He had witnessed entire worlds undone by simpler things than nuclear warheads, hubris, forgetfulness, poorly considered jokes. Humans, in his extensive observation, carried the seeds of all three. And so he had spoken, "Never give humans a reason to fight." Those 6 words, rasped in a voice like a cosmic wind scraping across ancient desert plains, had echoed through the council chamber as an uneasy hush fell. Many found it absurd. Why fear a species that was technologically centuries behind? Why dread a planet that was still obsessed with filming itself in embarrassing situations for amusement? Yet the fear in Elder Maruk's tone was real. He had observed the anomaly that was Earth from the earliest days of its industrial era. He had watched it erupt in bouts of horrifying violence, only to bounce back with an even greater capacity for invention, determination, and, strangest of all, humor. No one had forgotten the incident of the rubber chickens. That was a minor footnote in interstellar diplomacy, but it remained firmly lodged in the memory of the Council of Ilex III, whose proud ambassadors had been outraged. No formal declaration of war had been delivered by humanity, just a series of catapults launching squeaking faux poultry in the middle of what was supposed to be a civilized discussion. And for reasons that baffled every being in the Council, Earth had chosen to do this on a Tuesday, the galactic standard day of calm negotiations. The thought alone sent shivers through the delegates. Humans broke patterns for no discernible reason, or else they did it simply for the joke. Elder Maruk had sighed at that meeting, though the sound was more like a rusty drawer being pulled open. "They laugh," he had said, "when they are frightened. They argue for hours about trivial matters. Some eat foods so painfully hot that entire alien circulatory systems would dissolve. Others, apparently, spend 3 hours a day yelling at mechanical toasters, and in doing so, accidentally invent new artificial intelligences. Does this strike no one else as a threat to the cosmic equilibrium?" No one had listened to him then. They had politely coughed, an interspecies gesture of courtesy, and concluded that humanity was a primitive nuisance, not worth further attention. Clunt, the ambassador whose face resembled a soggy towel stuffed into a brass instrument, had famously quipped, "They once sent us a message that said suck it." They're hardly worth any deeper consideration. But time went on, tensions rose, and the little blue planet kept grabbing headlines in galactic circles. By the Council's next gathering, the phrase "we cannot predict them" was on every delegate's tongue. Of course, predictability was the bedrock of galactic order. Governments functioned, alliances formed, trade thrived, all because each species adhered, to some degree, to logical patterns of behavior. The humans, however, seemed to derive pleasure from shattering those patterns. They placed pineapple on pizza and started transcontinental arguments. They launched plush toys into orbit just to watch them float. They invented elaborate sports, revered them like holy rituals, yet also found ways to make fun of them at every turn. They were, in short, chaos incarnate. And so, the Council was forced to convene a special session, replete with all manner of protocol. A floating dais in the shape of a shimmering silver disk materialized in high orbit above Ilex III, and delegates from every sector arrived. Elder Maruk, by virtue of his ancient status, presided. This time, there was no more laughter when he repeated his old warning. Never give humans a reason to fight. But an ancient saying across the galaxy states that if too many committees gather, the best they can produce is a compromise that pleases no one. The delegates debated late into the cosmic evening. They considered quarantining Earth in an interdimensional bubble, but that was deemed financièrement impossible. They discussed sending additional ambassadors, but no volunteers stepped forward, presumably because of that rumored rubber chicken fiasco. Finally, a different proposition surfaced. We should simply test the humans. Nudge them. See how they respond. That will tell us how worried we ought to be. The first to pick up on this idea was the Zenith conglomerate, a consortium of jellyfish-like technocrats known for their unwavering obsession with data and their glaring lack of humor. The Zenith believed that every species could be broken down into variables, parameters, and predictable outcomes. In their arrogance, they dismissed Elder Maruk's warning as ancient superstition. After all, how could a planet full of people who posted videos of themselves dancing in kitchens possibly bring about a universal catastrophe? So the Zenith decided to block Earth's internet for exactly 24 hours. It would be a small test. They would watch from orbit, gather information, and measure the destabilization factor. They hypothesized that humans would devolve into primal chaos, creating the perfect demonstration that Earth could be subdued by a well-placed disruption. Their stealth satellites engaged at precisely 7:02 Universal Time Coordinated, severing every digital pipeline that connected Earth to the rest of its own network. The effect was immediate. At 7:04, a man in Detroit tried to reset his router 37 times in a single minute. When it failed, he stared blankly at the blinking lights and declared that the apocalypse had arrived. Panic messages flew across phone lines. People tapped their screens in disbelief. By 7:08, a portion of the population was half convinced that this was an official statement from some cosmic entity, a herald of the end times. Rumors of war, plague, and a final cosmic meltdown spread like wildfire through whatever offline channels people could still access. But the meltdown did not last long. A grandmother named Doris in rural Canada hijacked a local radio station and began reading old Facebook posts. The broadcast, initially met with confusion, soon became strangely comforting. She read everything from silly jokes to dramatic breakup announcements, her voice trembling with emotion as though these words were passages from sacred texts. Somehow, this quirky act inspired a movement. Groups began forming in parks to play board games that had been gathering dust for decades. Teenagers scribbled memes on paper and taped them to street signs. A group of disgruntled programmers, bored out of their minds without an internet to fix, spontaneously invented a new mesh network using code hangers, old Nokia phones, and an intangible phenomenon they referred to only as the vibe. Within hours, that improvised freenet had more active users than the original internet. Across the planet, pockets of creativity bloomed. Children rediscovered marbles and hopscotch. Adults rummaged through closets for puzzle boxes. A man in the middle of Times Square stood on a pedestal, brandishing an unplugged modem like a holy relic, shouting, "We don't need the internet. We have friends, family, and dusty game closets." The crowd cheered. Social media influencers, initially frantic, pivoted to creating offline content, filming themselves with ancient camcorders for future uploads once normal service resumed. And in perhaps the strangest turn, people began intentionally going outside and talking to one another, face to face. Observing all this from high orbit, the Zenith sub-analysts were baffled. The data they had projected suggested that Earth would unravel into barbarism within 2 hours. Yet at the 2-hour mark, they discovered that humans had become more interconnected, albeit in older, analog ways. One sub-analyst, who specialized in measuring screams, noted that yes, there had been an initial burst of panic, but by hour 3, the global cry frequency had subsided dramatically. Instead, he witnessed gatherings of humans singing karaoke, using battery-powered machines in the middle of the street, as though they were actively celebrating the loss of connectivity. By 7:35, the Zeniths experienced their first moment of genuine panic. A suspicious group calling itself the Librarians for Free Data, in partnership with an underground faction known only as the Conspiracy Theorists United, traced the origin of the planetary blackout. They discovered signals on hidden frequencies and realized that an external force was behind the internet disruption. Immediately, they set about forging a retaliatory strike, this time not with conventional weapons, but with weaponized sarcasm, an idea so bizarre that the Zeniths had no defense protocols for it. At precisely 8 o'clock, the Zeniths mothership received a sudden data burst. It bypassed their firewalls, playing a looping soundtrack of show tunes. Each file embedded within that transmission performed cascading merges onto critical systems, in effect, shutting down the entire stealth blockade in a matter of seconds. But more humiliating was the content of the final message. "Oh, we're so sorry. Were we using that internet? Our apologies for the inconvenience. Here, have a free singing virus to keep you company." The Zeniths' multiple brains collectively shrieked in 7-part harmony as their systems went offline. From the vantage of Earth, the internet flickered back to life a moment later. Instantly, 3 billion people typed, "What just happened?" and posted it across every social platform, a digital chorus of confusion. As for the Zeniths, they retreated, thoroughly shaken, refusing to share details with the rest of the council. Elder Maruk, upon receiving the tidbits of news that did leak out, merely shook his head in that slow, weary way of his. The test had confirmed exactly what he feared. Humans not only adapted to chaos, they seemed to welcome it. And, even worse, they found comedic ways to embrace it, as though a massive global crisis was something to be turned into a festival of memes and radio broadcasts. Unfortunately, arrogance is never in short supply among interstellar species, and it was not long before another group decided to run their own test. The Grari, a spindly race shaped vaguely like lanky squids wearing tall hats, believed they could succeed where the Zeniths failed by targeting humanity's affections directly. Through their cosmic intelligence networks, they discovered that humans had a peculiar obsession with small, furry creatures called cats. The Grari did not understand why. In their eyes, cats were merely decorative vermin, something to be eaten in an emergency, or at best, used as lab specimens. So they built a plan around feline extraction. It began quietly. Individual cats disappeared from suburban homes, from city apartment balconies, even from rural barns. For a while, humans barely noticed because cats had a habit of vanishing anyway, turning up days later on top of impossibly high shelves. But eventually, thanks to social media's unstoppable power, #WhereIsKitty started trending. The volume of missing cat posts spiked, and soon a wave of alarms spread across the planet. Celebrities posted selfies tearfully hugging empty cat beds. Newscasters delivered solemn bulletins about missing kittens, and volunteer search parties roamed neighborhoods, shaking boxes of treats. Still, the numbers of missing felines rose steadily. When the panic reached a fever pitch, a handful of captive cats arrived back on Earth. But they were nothing like the real thing. The Grari, wanting to appease humanity, or so they assumed, had engineered robotic cats with synthetic fur and stiff mechanical tails that wagged at all the wrong moments. These replacement cats were a catastrophic failure. One tried to upload its firmware after being distracted by a laser pointer, inadvertently beaming its data stream to a local news station. Another walked straight into a pond, trying to nap on water. A third attempted to mate with a toaster, short-circuiting an entire block's electrical grid. Outrage swept through Earth. Not only had someone stolen their beloved cats, but they had also tried to replace them with these soulless abominations. As if guided by a single mind, humanity escalated into a kind of unified rage. This time, no one waited to confirm who was responsible. Hackers from multiple continents launched Operation Furball, deploying wave after wave of glitter bombs, spyware-laden pictures of cat memes, and balloons filled with bees into the stratosphere. They overrode unsuspecting satellites and redirected them toward the Grari mothership in orbit. On board that ship, the real cats, having escaped their containment units, which are never truly secure to begin with, roamed free, tangling themselves in wires, meowing at half-panicked Grari scientists, and occasionally pressing random buttons with their paws. When presented with fish as an appeasement, one tabby famously stared for 5 long seconds, then batted the fish onto the floor and strode away. The situation descended into anarchy. Grari soldiers argued with each other over protocol. One group claimed the ship was haunted, while another insisted the cats must be gods that demanded worship. In desperation, someone tried to contact Earth directly, using a text-to-speech filter that, by cosmic coincidence, happened to mimic the voice of a cartoon duck. It produced the phrase, "Please stop, we mean no harm," across all frequencies. Convinced that the Grari were mocking them, humanity redoubled its assault. By the end, the mothership surrendered unconditionally. Unbeknownst to the Grari, many cats refused to leave the ship, preferring the zero-gravity environment where they could float lazily, batting at the panicked tentacles of their erstwhile captors. The Council of Ilex III convened once more, only to find that fear and embarrassment now colored every delegate's stance toward Earth. The Xenithi refused to discuss the virus that had serenaded them with show tunes. The Grari had retreated into a silent gloom, their grand hats crumpled in shame. Rumors began to circulate that the humans might become bolder, might soon harness these improbable successes into an actual attempt at cosmic expansion. Elder Maruk quietly said, "I told you so," though he used far more eloquent language to convey that general sentiment. The other delegates muttered and cast blame on each other's short-sightedness. Among these delegates were the Yundari, a culture that prided itself on diplomacy and social stratification. They believed themselves masters of negotiation and saw the fiascos with the Xenithi and Grari as laughable examples of incompetence. From their perspective, no one had tried actual strategy. The Yundari had shaped entire star systems to their will through careful, condescending conversation. They believed they could subjugate Earth with words alone, offering deals so lopsided that no rational species could resist. They arrived in Earth's orbit in a gleaming ship shaped like a spoon, radiating a smug aura reminiscent of a grammar teacher convinced they alone have the correct interpretation. Their opening broadcast, sent simultaneously in every human language, began, "Greetings, lesser beings of Terra. We extend to you an opportunity." That was as far as the humans got before someone on the internet created a spoof translation that read, "Hello, Earthlings. We're here to steal your dignity and your footwear." Within minutes, that version went viral, overshadowing the original message entirely. Unaware of the mischief, the Yundari pressed on, dispatching their esteemed ambassador, Tulvesh Vesh, to Geneva for a grand summit. Tulvesh arrived in ceremonial robes woven from the silk of extinct cloud birds, stepping out of his vessel with the aloof demeanor of one who believes they've already won. He was greeted by a small crowd consisting of a man in a chicken suit, a jazz band playing the final countdown in joyous, off-key repetition, and a large banner that read, "Probe me gently." His translator device flickered in confusion. "Humans of Earth," he intoned, clearing a pharyngeal sac that flared beneath his chin. "We come bearing an opportunity for your kind. Submit peacefully to our higher order, and you shall be integrated into our civilization to serve a greater universal purpose." A man shouted from the back, "Does that greater purpose include coffee breaks?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Tulvesh frowned, certain that the translator must be malfunctioning. Nonetheless, he continued, "Failure to comply," he said, "will bring consequences beyond comprehension." A woman stepped forward, her hair dyed electric blue, holding a handmade sign that read, "Define comprehension, pretty boy." More laughter. The jazz band shifted into a loud, brassy rendition of a disco tune. Tulvesh stormed back to his ship. He demanded they transmit a formal ultimatum, listing Earth's various violations of cosmic law. The arrogance of resisting advanced species, the potential hazard they pose by launching memes into subspace frequencies, and the unforgivable insolence of ignoring Yundari authority. This ultimatum, titled the Terra Integration Protocol, was 37 pages of dense legalese. Within hours, a dramatic reading of that document surfaced on Earth's largest video platforms, performed by a flamboyant local actor who specialized in drunken Shakespeare impersonations. He slurred his way through the lines in an overly dramatic accent, turning the phrase, "You must relinquish your sovereignty," into something that sounded like a comedic lament. It was the most-watched video on the planet for an entire week. Government officials worldwide, standing beneath a massive banner reading, "Negotiating with narcissistic squid people since Tuesday," gave a press conference that concluded with an interpretive dance routine. The dancers wore togas and masks of Greek philosophers, acting out the text of the Yundari ultimatum in pantomime. Tulvesh barely managed to endure a day of this madness before seeking professional help. The Yundari believed strongly in mental health protocols and had a stable of interplanetary therapists, so he requested an immediate therapy session to cope with the stress inflicted by Earth's bizarre reactions. Unfortunately for him, the only available counselor was human. By the end of the hour, Tulvesh was curled up in a fetal position, muttering, "They laughed when I threatened them," over and over, while the human therapist patted his shoulder gently and offered him chamomile tea, saying, "Oh, sweetheart, welcome to Earth." The fiasco was complete. The Yundari assembled an emergency war council, concluding that humanity was an existential threat to their sense of order. The final resolution was to mount a coordinated invasion, codenamed Order of Ascendancy, which they would launch at 4 o'clock Earth time, presumably catching humans groggy and ill-prepared. The Yundari's Intergalactic Strategic Council even reasoned that humans, prior to their daily caffeination rituals, would be at their weakest. While Elder Maruk quietly repeated his old mantra about not giving humans a reason to fight, the Yundari paid him no heed. Their fleet prepared for war. They descended in the pre-dawn darkness over Earth's major metropolitan areas, guided by highly sophisticated software designed to identify strategic points of control. Unfortunately for the invaders, that software had been updated by a disgruntled Yundari programmer named Blog who had been fired but still retained admin privileges. With a vengeful flourish, Blog inserted a minor patch that scrambled the invasion coordinates. Instead of landing on the White House lawn in Washington, D.C., one squad of Yundari shock troopers found themselves at Midwestern Garlic Festival, where half the attendees were heavily armed with skewers for roasting. Another detachment that was meant to paralyze London's financial district landed in a water park in southern France. A third group descended upon an early morning NASCAR event in Alabama. The results were immediate and chaotic. At the water park, the Yundari tanks rolled out, only for children and bleary-eyed parents to start hurling inflatable pool toys at them. Alarms blared in the alien vehicles, warning of incoming projectiles, but the projectiles were shaped like smiling unicorns, and the operators inside could make no sense of it. In Alabama, a group of rowdy fans mistaken the Yundari ships for experimental NASCAR jets, prompting them to wave massive foam fingers and challenge the aliens to a race around the track. Several humans, hopped up on energy drinks, leaped onto Yundari hover bikes, inadvertently discovering how to pilot them. They soared off in circles, whooping and hollering in unbridled glee. Meanwhile, the Yundari troopers were left stumbling around, confused and unprepared to face an opponent that greeted them with rock music, barbecue smoke, and a woman named Trixie who brandished a spatula in each hand, screaming, "Y'all picked the wrong planet." In central London, the situation was no less absurd. A tank unit emerged near a busy intersection, attempting to block traffic. They were immediately rear-ended by 3 taxis and a double-decker bus. One cabbie stepped out, spat a used cigarette onto the pavement, and stared at the towering alien machinery with the same weary annoyance he typically reserved for tourists. "You want a tip or what, mate?" he asked. A Yundari pilot was so flummoxed by the question that he forgot to engage his translator, merely blinking in silence as horns blared from lines of annoyed drivers behind them. All of this would have been embarrassing enough if humans had shown any semblance of fear or respect. Instead, A group of bored teenagers in Tokyo hacked into the Yandari's formation drones and overrode their target recognition software, forcing them into a well-choreographed aerial display set to the Top Gun soundtrack. The invasion attempt was becoming an unwitting halftime show. In Canada, a small squad of Yandari troops tried to occupy a power station, only to be met by a solitary man in a hockey jersey who shouted, "Not in my province, you spongy wankers," as he swung his hockey stick. The aliens, baffled by a single individual's valor, and further unnerved by the word wankers, which their translator recognized only as a highly disrespectful term, hesitated just long enough for local authorities to arrive and usher them away with a polite but firm wave of pepper spray. General Traejun, aboard the Yandari flagship, was in near hysterics. Reports of comedic humiliations poured in every minute. "They're throwing cans of beans at our recon squad. One man is dancing in front of our drones wearing nothing but a helmet and underpants. A group of women has converted one of our hovercraft into a karaoke lounge." The general barked orders in a flurry of panic languages, but nothing got through the jam channels. Some signals have been replaced by images of cats wearing tiny hats with the words, "Never again." At precisely 6:30, the invasion was officially unsalvageable. Entire wings of the Yandari forces refused to leave their ships, terrified by the unpredictability of these earthlings. Others, desperate for comfort, had started kidnapping any stray cat they found, hoping to calm themselves with purring therapy. Some had taken to wearing Hawaiian shirts looted from local gift shops, claiming that blending in might spare them from the humans' bizarre aggression. It did not work. Instead, they were roped into a spontaneous barbecue. By 7 o'clock, the invasion's central command was deluged with distress calls. In Nebraskan farmland, a group of farmers had somehow reprogrammed an alien mech using scrap tractor parts, duct tape, and an old radio. The newly formed Tractor Mech 3000 was parading through a field, blasting polka music while the Yandari pilot inside pleaded for rescue. Military intelligence officers on the flagship tried to piece together a coherent picture, but all they got was a kaleidoscopic mess of frantic transmissions, comedic background noises, and the unstoppable hum of Earth population having far too much fun with the so-called invasion. An officer showed General Traejun a live feed of humans apparently playing Capture the Flag using Yandari war banners. "They're enjoying this," the officer whispered, horrified. Traejun stared at the screen in disbelief. A tall man wearing a Yandari helmet as a diaper was leading a charge against alien drones, howling something about free tacos. The general, for the first time in his distinguished career, felt a pang of existential dread. He gave a single, choke command, "Retreat." Word spread through the Yandari lines that the operation was aborted. Ships ascended rapidly, ignoring the occasional tomato or water balloon that soared after them. Earth's defenders, if they could be called that, watched with a mix of triumph and confusion. The entire fiasco had transpired in just under 4 hours. The damage to Earth's infrastructure was minimal. A few crushed water slides, some stolen radio parts, a handful of shorted circuits. But the psychological damage to the Yandari fleet was incalculable. They returned to orbit in a state of shock and disarray. Private logs that later leaked to the Cosmic Rumor Mill described how proud Yandari officers had melted down psychologically, refusing to speak any language but Earth slang or scrawling LOL onto official reports. Others tried to reintegrate, but every time they closed their eyes, they saw images of humans wearing pajamas in public, brandishing spatulas as weapons, and hurling bagels at their dropships. In the days that followed, most of the Yandari chain of command resigned, citing insurmountable trauma. They were not alone. Across the galaxy, word spread of the humans' improbable resilience and chaotic creativity. The more distant species, unaware of the details, heard only that multiple advanced civilizations had attempted to break Earth, socially, emotionally, militarily, and had failed in the most humiliating ways possible. Rumors burgeoned that Earth was no longer a mere planet. It was a Class X risk, or perhaps even something darker, a place that was so illogical that no advanced strategy could reliably conquer it. Those who had listened to Elder Maruk's warnings now realized the truth behind them. Never give humans a reason to fight, he had said, because they will not fight the way you expect. They will fight you with everything from sarcasm to stale pastries, from memes to marbles. They will have the audacity to enjoy themselves while doing it. Elder Maruk himself delivered a final address to the council from a place of deep exhaustion. He recounted the fiascos, Xenithi losing to show Toon viruses, Grari undone by cats, Yandari humiliated by a species that wielded jokes like swords. With a voice like a cosmic wind, he said, "It is not that humans are invincible. It is that they refuse to play the game. You cannot outmaneuver them on a battlefield of reason because they do not remain on that battlefield. They shift the terrain to something that only they understand, and they laugh at you for trying." No official policy was enacted that day. Instead, the grand powers of the galaxy quietly decided that Earth was too unpredictable, too infuriating, and possibly too dangerous. Trade routes were redirected to avoid the Sol system. Academic conferences suddenly omitted any mention of humanity, lest anyone be tempted to investigate the matter further. Even black market smugglers avoided Earth, not out of ethical qualms, but because one unlucky smuggling ship had landed in a Walmart parking lot during a clearance sale and found itself stampeded by shoppers. The crew never made it out with their dignity intact. On Earth, life mostly went back to normal. News outlets ran stories about this space invasion fiasco, but these were quickly overshadowed by celebrity drama, sports championships, and conspiracy theories about whether the aliens had come to steal Nutella recipes. Social media was flooded with comedic reenactments of the invasion. People laughed at the notion that entire cosmic empires had retreated from a few water balloons and random bursts of karaoke. The most viral clip featured an alien soldier slipping on a banana peel and tumbling into a duck pond, ironically set to clown music. For weeks afterward, the duck pond clip tied in popularity with a remix featuring jazz flute. In a small park in suburban Ohio, a group of neighbors who had once gathered to play board games during the great internet outage met again, this time with a new sense of camaraderie. They joked about the day their world got cut off from the net and how it had brought them closer together. They marveled at the memory of retaking their lives from the digital realm, if only briefly, and discovering that their greatest strength lay in sheer, unbridled adaptability. Meanwhile, far away in a dimly lit council chamber, Elder Maruk sat alone, half drifting in and out of an ancient reverie. He had witnessed countless catastrophes, stars imploding, civilizations crumbling under their own arrogance. Yet never before had he seen an entire planet unify under such bizarre conditions, turning invasions into comedic farce. The humans had proven that sometimes a sense of humor was the deadliest weapon of all, or at least the most disorienting one. From that day forward, no further committees were formed to deal with the human problem. The galaxy collectively decided it was safer to leave Earth alone. Whispers of Earth's bizarre ways continued to circulate in cosmic taverns and meeting halls, with storytellers recounting how entire armies had been undone by bagels and polka music. At least 3 separate star systems outlawed the importation of memes, calling them digital mind poisons that could bring entire societies to ruin if left unchecked. Earth, for its part, hardly noticed the shift. People had short memories and were busy with their day-to-day lives, going to work, binge-watching shows, stumbling upon the next viral dance challenge. Some joked that the aliens had noped right out of here, once they realized how unhinged humanity could be. A few felt pride. Others worried about future repercussions. But the majority went back to complaining about pineapples on pizza and trying to brew the perfect cup of coffee. If ever there was a coda to be written, it would be this. In a small rural town, an old farmer was rumored to have faced down a Yundari trooper with nothing but a stale donut and an unshakable sense of humor. When asked if he was scared, he shrugged. "They might have big guns and fancy ships," he said, "but we've got bigger jokes, and that rattles them more than any bullet." Another rumor claimed that a teenage boy live-streamed himself yelling, You want to go? I got nothing to lose and a coupon for free tacos at a Yandari drone. The phrase, illogical as it was, became a cosmic meme that confounded scholars in distant star clusters for years to come. Whether all of that was entirely accurate or embellished in the retelling, no one knew. But it captured the spirit of what had transpired. Advanced civilizations, armed with strategic genius and powerful technology, had tried time and again to bend Earth to their will. Yet they had not understood that the humans, in their chaotic sincerity, were playing a different game altogether. They had fought back with jokes, with stubbornness, with a kind of reckless creativity that no algorithm could predict. And most shockingly, they had fun while doing it. The elders, with their centuries of wisdom, could only shake their heads. The final warning had been crystal clear: never give humans a reason to fight. But the interstellar community, in its ignorance, had provided humanity with more than enough reasons: attacking their internet, kidnapping their cats, insulting their dignity. Each time, Earth had responded in a way no rational mind could have expected. And perhaps that was the truest danger. A species that refused to be subdued or terrified, that turned adversity into jokes, was a species that could not be truly conquered. Such, then, was the legacy of Earth in the cosmic annals. The planet that took invasions as personal challenges to invent the weirdest possible responses. To this day, on distant outposts where travelers and traders from 100 species gather, one might catch a snippet of conversation about humanity. They speak of how humans apparently like to put bananas in microwaves just to see what happens, how they watch bizarre shows about people arguing on islands for a small sum of money, how they publicly announce their children's academic achievements on the bumpers of their vehicles. They mention how entire war fleets were undone by disco tunes and inflatable pool toys. Laughter, fear, disbelief, they all mingle in these accounts. But no one dares to try again. The moral stands unspoken. Earth is better left alone. Some say that if you see Elder Maruk in his private meditation chamber, you can sense a hint of relief, as if he no longer bears the weight of being the sole doomsayer. His word had been vindicated thoroughly. He might even smile, if one of those many wrinkles truly counts as a mouth. Of course, he will never openly admit to satisfaction. But perhaps he finally has the peace of knowing that his greatest worry has played out in a way that, while destructive to alien egos, did not end in a galactic apocalypse. Life goes on, if a bit more humbly and a bit more warily, with respect to that chaotic blue planet swirling around a nondescript star. In the grand scheme of cosmic time, Earth remains a speck, yet it is a speck that has yelled at toasters until they became sentient, that catapulted rubber chickens at ambassadors for comedic effect, that survived hours without the internet, and emerged with hand-drawn memes in triumphant color. It is a speck that turns the mightiest of war machines into carnival rides, that can unify over something as simple as a missing cat, and that can scare off a disciplined armada with dancing, bagels, and karaoke. And that, perhaps, is enough to ensure that no sensible invader will ever try to subjugate them again. So if there's a final note, it is this. The galaxy learned a lesson it did not expect, that advanced technology and elaborate strategies crumble before unorthodox, unbridled humor and stubborn optimism. Elder Maruk had tried to warn them all. Now, the story of Earth serves as that warning made manifest. For every starfaring empire that contemplates stirring the human hornet's nest, echoes of the fiasco remain. The day the internet was cut and replaced by rebellious librarians, the day cats were abducted and replaced with malfunctioning robo-kitties, and the day a grand armada landed, only to be undone by barbecue sauce and disco. Each tale ends with the same moral, repeated in hushed voices. Never give humans a reason to fight. They gave them several. Look how that turned out.